Exactly. Yeah, I've been talking to him all day.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's not. Oh, I need my computer up here.
No, unless you want to look official.
I want to look
No,
official.
I'm kidding. You don't need it. You don't need it.
Okay,
Sure,
I see
I'm gonna
people
get
coming
my
in.
computer.
I think I can.
What?
Because I'm charged.
Oh, thank you.
Adam Minsky.
I'm just running out of juice here.
Before you sit down, I just gotta put this microphone into your mouth.
Okay.
Do it like this. Just go ahead and
There,
bring this
just
down
relax.
through your shirt, please.
Hey.
Are we live?
Oh, wow, I can see. Oh, hey, Sandy. How are you?
Talk about.
Give us just a few minutes. Wow, the computer is way past on this. I've got a lag on the computer. You know, do you have Periscope on your
phone?
yeah.
I'm not, you're not
I think
gonna
I
get
got
more,
rid of
so I'm just
it.
gonna put this.
Okay.
If you want this,
Hold on.
I'll put it.
Because I've got such a big lag here, I can't see
manage
who's in and
this.
who's not.
Just lock it, right? I'll do a mic check once I get back there.
3 or 4 minutes, folks.
Okay. All right, let me put this mic on you real quick.
Got the mic on me.
Yep. Running up your shirt, please, for me.
Yeah, sure.
Down at the top.
You don't
Don't
go
wear
off
it.
camera.
You can't run around with this one.
Yeah, now.
Oh, look, I'm still standing on the.
Yes, I know. He says in lag.
That's awkward.
There you go.
We're good?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. Wow, we've got 24 people in.
So,
Okay, do you have the app on your phone?
I'm getting it. Give me a
Okay.
second.
Because then I can more realistically see it. Wow, we've got 39 people in, 40 people in.
Okay, I'm in. You know what?
Here.
Yeah, you do it. I'm going to eat my Kit Kats.
You gotta enter your Twitter password here.
Are you signing in for me?
No, you need to enter your Twitter password.
Right, I'm trying to remember what, oh God, what is it?
We're the backwards team for student loan law. How about that?
What does that mean backwards to?
Well,
Uh-oh.
Okay,
I
it's
don't
not a
know.
joke. Fine.
Could other than Josh, could one of you each at a time just say your name and count to 10 for me?
Adam, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9,
Okay.
10.
Could you say your name and count to 10?
J, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
All right, cool, thank you.
I don't remember my password. I don't remember. I don't sign in. Do you want to
Oh,
sign in?
you're kidding.
Do you want to sign in for now and then I'll take it off?
Geek Fest. I don't, you know what?
We're much better with student loans than technology.
We really are. Hey, speak for yourself.
I'm glad to hear that because you saw me. It took me about 12 minutes to uncord this little tangle.
All right. Thanks for being here, everybody. Wow, look at this. We've got a full house here, folks.
How many?
Please let me know when it's going to start. Give me like a 20-second.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, let's start now, I guess.
Want to start?
Yeah.
All right,
Sure.
stand by. I'm rolling whenever you, I'm good on my end.
Fantastic. Well, that'll be good. Hopefully, hopefully we'll be able to get it. All right. So I guess. Oh, well, we've got a first question. Is there a time limit to paying back student loans?
There is, but before we get into the questions, let's
Let's do
introduce
that.
our panel.
Let's
Hi.
introduce our panel.
I'm Joshua Cohen, student loan lawyer. Sitting next to me to my right is Adam Minsky.
I'm Adam Minsky. I am also a student loan lawyer based in Boston, Massachusetts.
And I'm Jay Fleischman. I'm also a student loan lawyer, I guess. Wow, 3 of us. Wowee. And I'm in California as well as in New York. So thanks for being here, everybody.
Now repeat the first question, please, Jay.
Is there a time limit to paying back student loans, Josh?
is there a time limit to paying them back? I'm not sure I'm fully understanding that question. I guess, are they asking, is there a definite term to pay student loans back?
Yeah, well, let's do it that way. For how long? How about how long do you need to pay your student loans back? I mean,
Well, you could actually stretch it out indefinitely, but most federal student loans come with a 10-year term that you can extend up to 25 years if your balance is over $30,000.
and what if it's under $30,000?
If it's under $30,000, you can still have a 25-year term under income-based repayment or repay.
And if you consolidate your federal loans, you can actually get up to a 30-year term for federal loans. Private loans are different. The loan repayment terms for private student loans are specified in the actual underlying loan contract. Typically that's 10, 15, or 20-year terms. Occasionally I've seen a 25-year term for private loans, but I've never seen a 30-year term before.
Mm.
Well, and what if you don't pay? If you don't pay on the federal student loans?
Go ahead, Adam.
Well, if you don't pay, so for federal student loans, there's a period of what we call delinquency, which is where you're behind on payments. You have a period of 270 days where you can be behind on your student loan payments on federal loans before you actually technically hit default status. Default status is when the status of your loan changes, the entire balance becomes due, and that's called acceleration, and then it can go into collections, and a whole bunch of nasty things can happen. I'll let Josh talk about some
Nasty
of the
things. Do we want to get into the nasty things?
We're gonna go rapid fire on these questions.
Okay.
Here.
Okay.
Somebody said that their student loan account was locked because a co-borrower filed for bankruptcy,
Filed
so
for
Sally
bankruptcy.
Mae locked them out.
They locked him out because, unfortunately, there's probably a clause in that contract that accelerates and causes the loan to default. Once it defaults, they won't accept payments, mostly because of the bankruptcy.
Right.
Bankruptcy Chapter 13s come with a cosigner stay, and so they're afraid that doing anything with the non-filer is still a violation, and that's really what it comes.
I call this the death and bankruptcy clause. It's in most private student loan contracts. It says if either the borrower or the co-borrower dies or declares bankruptcy, the entire loan becomes due, and if you don't pay it, it goes into default.
Okay. And now we've got, what's our next one up? Talk about consolidation. If you're in deferment, can you still consolidate? I say for federal student loans, you can consolidate so long as you're not in an active wage garnishment,
Or a judgment.
Correct.
presuming that you haven't consolidated before.
And just to be clear, we're talking about federal loan consolidation, which
Right.
means you do it through the U.S. Department of Education. There are private student loan consolidation companies as well. Those usually you're required to be in good standing on the loans that you're consolidating through private lender. That's not necessarily true for federal loans. You can consolidate in deferment, forbearance, repayment, default under most circumstances.
What he said.
What are the perks of consolidation? I think this begs the question of the difference between consolidation and refinance.
Yes.
Because consolidation and refinance are they're confused a lot by a
Well,
lot of people.
and I wouldn't even use the term refinance when we talk about federal student loans. I would use consolidation for federal loans and refi for private loans.
Right.
Right, and so the difference is that consolidation is only through the U.S. Department of Education, and it's only for federal student loans.
Right.
And consolidation is essentially the same as a refi, though. I mean,
Correct.
That's how most people would think about it. You take all of your existing loans, you bundle them together, and the resulting student loan. What's the interest rate on the resulting student loan? Do we shop for
Weighted
that?
average.
It's a
Weighted
weighted
average.
average, right? So you're not really saving any money.
The main benefits of a federal direct loan consolidation, I basically boil it down to 3 or 4. Number one is you can simplify your repayment of your federal loans if you have multiple federal loans with multiple servicers. Number two, if you have different types of federal loans, Feld program loans, Perkins loans, and direct loans. If you do a direct loan consolidation, it converts everything into a direct loan, which then makes it eligible for some special repayment and forgiveness programs. And number three, if you've exhausted your deferment and forbearance options, or if you're in default on some of your loans, it can give you a fresh start. Those are the main benefits of the federal loan consolidation.
Right. And it'll reamortize them.
Yes.
And there's also the management. If you have your loans with several different servicers, you've now got one servicer.
And you get to choose your servicer as well, which if you hate your servicer, that's a good opportunity to change your servicer.
Yes.
Right. To another one that you'll eventually hate.
Exactly.
Exactly. So, so that's consolidation. Refinance is private student loans to a private bank, right?
Yes.
But you can also consolidate your federal student loans into a private loan.
Only if you're stupid.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'll say it like that.
No,
because-
wait a minute.
And I will expand upon that. And granted, that's a little off the cuff, but I see no reason to trade in the federal benefits of flexible repayment schedules and the ability to cure your loan if you default. Why would you take that away and put it into a private loan? The only reason I see is if you're a good income earner, not necessarily high, but good, and you are on a plan that no matter what happens, you're going to pay off this sucker through a private lender.
So the people who tend to be good targets for private loan refinancing of federal loans are people who have gone to law school or medical school and have very large federal student loan debts with very high interest rates in the 7, 8, 9% range. And you can refinance those through private lending programs often at half that rate. But what people need to understand is that, like Josh said, refinancing your federal loans through a private program is a one-way street out of the federal system. You will forever lose out on all of those federal benefits like income-driven repayment and loan forgiveness, and you cannot get back in. So it is a risky thing to do no matter who you are.
And can an older loan be reconsolidated?
There's no age limit there's no age discrimination among the federal student loans.
Got it.
I guess
So-
talking within the federal student loan system.
Right. So you can consolidate all of your federal loans into a direct loan.
Correct.
Yes.
You can also consolidate, if you consolidated prior to, say, 2010, and you have a field consolidated loan,
Do it
you
again.
can consolidate into a direct loan.
Correct.
But once
Correct.
you've consolidated all of your direct loans, you can't reconsolidate another reconsolidation.
Correct.
Okay? All right. So how about borrowers die? Do student loans die when you die?
If it's federal, yes. If it's a private, Lord help
Maybe.
you.
For private loans that are co-signed, if there's a co-signer on your private loan, the loan will survive the borrower's death and the co-signer will still owe the loan unless the contract provides for an alternative. For federal loans, there is a death discharge. When you die, the loan dies.
How about for
So-
a Parent Plus loan?
Parent Plus loan, if the borrower
Or the child for which the borrower took out the Parent Plus loan, if either of them died, then the
yes.
loan is
Now the other problem with the private student loan is if it does happen to die, it doesn't actually die with the borrower. Instead, it goes after the estate.
Yes.
Is there a way to get rid of Navient as a servicer? Everybody hates Navient.
Not everybody.
I hate that.
There are
all living people hate Navient.
there are a few stockholders that still have
The
faith.
stockholders love it.
Um,
Well, no, their stock is
To
tanking
answer the
too.
question, can you get rid of Navient? If you have a private loan, you're going to have to find a way to refi it with somebody else.
Right.
If it's a federal loan, yes. What Adam was saying with consolidation, you can choose a new servicer.
Navient is one of them. So if you really like Navient, you could choose Navient to be your consolidation
That was not
servicer.
the question.
We're trying to leave Navient, not come into Navient. Let's talk about just a little bit about public service loan forgiveness. We have a teacher who's asking about public service loan forgiveness, where that's 120 payments made after October 1st, 2007.
July.
July? October.
So
It was
here's
passed in July.
It was enacted in July.
It was enacted in July. But
Fine.
Okay, it
The
was
point is
July.
2007.
July.
27.
So the easiest way to think of public service loan forgiveness is this way. You have to have the right type of loan, which is federal direct loans. Any other type of loan does not qualify. Number two, you have to have the right type of repayment, which means repayment under any income-driven repayment plan or the 10-year standard plan, which pays off the loan in 10 years anyway. Number three, you have to have the right type of employment, which is full-time, qualifying public service employment for a 501c3 nonprofit organization or a government entity. And number 4, you have to do this 120 times. We think of it and talk about it as a 10-year program, but it's actually a 120 individual payment program, and you have to meet the eligibility requirements for every single one of those payments. It also means it doesn't have to be consecutive, so you can go in and out of public service. But those are the basic requirements.
And you can flip jobs.
Yes.
You can change
So
that.
You could even work 2 part-time jobs that equal 30 hours a week. That will work as long as both part-time jobs are qualifying jobs.
But wait a minute. The 30 hours is also deceptive because full-time is either 30 hours or what your employer says is full-time,
No,
whichever is greater.
30 hours and what your
Right.
if your employer, if you work 32 hours for your employer and your employer considers you to be part-time, you don't make the cut.
Exactly. Exactly.
You don't.
I read the
Right.
So go back.
Okay, well, it should be a difference in opinion. We'll qualify that.
Well, and then the question came in. You said 10 years, 10-year repayment, 10 years worth of repayment. Aren't you going to be out of the loan? But again, you can flip back and forth between all of your payment plans. So you can be in repay, then IBR, then ICR, then 10-year, then flip back and forth.
Yes.
Let's say you're in default.
Okay.
And you're going to rehab out of default, because you can get out of default in 2 ways: rehabilitation or loan consolidation. If you're currently in rehab, making your 9 monthly payments over a 10-month period of time, is your tax refund going to be offset while you're in rehab?
Yes.
If you're in the Treasury Offset Program, yes.
If you're in default, your taxes are at risk. Period.
Okay, so what do we do?
You don't file until you get the notice. Notice that you're out of default. Not the fact that, I made my 9th payment. No. Wait until you get the letter that says, hey, you're out of default.
And just to add on to that, even if you get a letter that says you're out of default, it can take up to 30 to 45 days for the IRS to, I say 60.
Yeah, I say 60 as well.
But it can take, let's say 60 days for the offset order to actually be released. So you can file an extension to October to file your taxes. But I'm sure Josh and Jay would both agree with me that if you're thinking about delaying filing taxes, you should do so in consultation with a qualified tax expert, so you hopefully minimize your penalties. But if you're expecting a tax refund and you're in default, it's going to get seized most likely.
No penalty
Right.
for getting a refund.
Right, and if you're past the October the October extension date, all that's going to happen is your refund's going to get reduced.
It'll be reduced a little
Yeah.
bit.
You don't.
Oh, that's right.
It's a refund. You don't owe money,
that's
so there's
true,
no
that's
penalty.
true.
You don't
'Cause
need
it's-
an extension or anything.
Right.
You're getting a refund.
Exactly, and they'll hold your refund for 3 years.
3 years. And if you can't get out of default in 3 years, it means you haven't called any of us.
That's true.
Another
That's-
option is to consolidate. While you're rehabilitating, you can consolidate. There's nothing stopping you from doing
Nothing
that.
at all.
If timing is of the essence for you and you really need that refund as soon as possible, then you can consolidate.
Right. No, it's a good point. So but then aren't you going to run into? Of course, you're going to run into problems for accounting. I mean, you're making your 9 monthly payments, and what are the odds? Have you guys seen that you make a payment while the paperwork's getting shuffled back and forth? And
So the way it's supposed to happen is if you do a consolidation while rehabbing, if you make a payment and then your loan gets paid off through consolidation, they are supposed to forward that payment to your new servicer. If that payment gets lost, there are actions one can take to recover it.
Yes.
right. And rehab is 9 monthly payments over a 10-month period of time. And do you keep making the payments after the rehab's done? Like after your 9 monthly payments are
You
made?
keep making payments until you get a letter that says, congratulations, you have been fully rehabilitated. If you make 12 payments, you need help. It should be done within 12.
So essentially, there's what I call a transitionary period, where after your 9th payment is made, for direct loans, your rehabilitated loan needs to be placed with a new servicer. For FEL program loans, your rehabilitated loan needs to be sold to a new lender and also placed with a new servicer. That period typically takes 30 to 60 days after your 9th payment. Usually it happens in the first month after your 9th payment. But you have to continue making your payments after that 9th payment has been made until you get that letter. If not, you cannot complete rehab.
Got it. We've got somebody in IBR finishing up her 12 months. Can she recertify?
She's supposed to.
You've got to recertify.
Yeah,
If you don't, well, and if you don't recertify, your monthly amount is going to jump up to the 10-year standard.
Yeah.
And
your interest is going to
if you've been
capitalize.
negatively amortizing, your interest will capitalize. So if you have not recertified and you're approaching your 12th month, you should get that recertification in like yesterday.
So
Exactly.
when in the 12-month period, when should you recertify?
So the question is,
Then?
when do you recertify in the 12-month period? And the answer is 60 to 90 days prior to your 12th payment. That's typically when the recertification takes place. Your servicer is supposed to notify you either by mail if you have selected that as your correspondence method, or by paperless correspondence if that's your chosen method. But they're supposed to let you know. It doesn't always happen.
That's why we're here.
Right. I tell people everybody's got a phone, everybody's got a calendar in their phone, calendared for 10
Yep.
months. If you haven't heard from them, go ahead and
Do it.
yeah, and do it. And one thing that a lot of people don't realize is if you lose your job halfway through your IBR period, you can recertify immediately.
Yes.
You can bring that money down. So if you're paying, $250 a month, you lose your job, bring it down right away. And this always bugs me. Do you guys ever have anybody call you who went through a period of unemployment and they opted into IBR during the unemployment? You
No.
always have people if you lose your job, your federal student loans, you shouldn't take the deferment. Always opt into IBR if you're not already in it, because then you start the clock running on your forgiveness. Because you're still in repayment. You can have a $0 repayment, and so many borrowers don't realize that. IBR stands for income-based repayment. It is one of the income-dependent repayment options that are available for federal student loans. You've got income-based repayment. Wow, this is going to be like a quiz. It's income-contingent repayment. It's income-based repayment, new income-based repayment, pay-as-you-earn, and revised pay-as-you-earn.
And they each have their own formulas, their own eligibility criteria. It's a little bit tricky.
Right. Here's somebody who made 9 monthly payments and was told that her payments now went up, and she had to make significantly larger payments, or else she was going to get thrown back into default. And it sounds to me as if maybe she went through rehab, came out of rehab, and didn't opt into IBR right away.
I can right now.
So once you complete your 9th payment and you're out of rehabilitation, you might be placed into a standard plan of some kind, depending on the balance of your loan. That could be 10 years, 20 years, or 30 years, or 25 years, which means that your rehabilitation payment, which is usually based on your income, your payment when you exit rehabilitation can increase enormously. You have to affirmatively apply for an income-driven plan if you want to maintain a monthly payment based on your income.
So call the servicer and say, hey, what kind of payment plan am I on? And they'll tell you, and you'll say, oh, I want repay or income-based, and just get that ball rolling.
Right, exactly. And income-based repayment original is 15% of adjusted gross income. If you're married and you file separately, they only look at your adjusted gross income.
Correct.
But they will count your spouse as part of the family size so long as you and your spouse live together, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. How about revised pay-as-you-earn? Same thing or different?
Different. With repay, they have what I like to call the marriage penalty, which is your spouse's income counts towards that formula no matter how you file.
So revised pay-as-you-earn has a lower formula. Instead of 15% of discretionary income under IBR, it's 10% for revised pay-as-you-earn. So it's a third cheaper if you're a single borrower. If you're a married borrower, it's also a third cheaper, but there's that marriage issue, which means that for some married couples, you'll actually pay more under repay than you would as married filing separately under IBR.
Yes.
Totally.
It's
it
15.
depends, yeah.
It's either 15% of your pay or 10% of both of your pay,
Right.
which is cheaper. That's what you need to run.
How do you get the forgiveness loan, which I think the question is, because I think this may have been the same person who said, what do we think of public service loan forgiveness?
I think it's beautiful.
What?
I think it's beautiful.
It is beautiful, but how many people ask you guys, how do we know if this is still going to be around at the end of 120
All of them
payments?
do. And my
it's the
response
most
is,
common question.
how do we know Congress is going to do anything?
Right.
Congress is infamous for doing nothing.
We still have farm subsidies from the Great Depression
You know,
that are still on the books. Congress doesn't take stuff
Yes.
take stuff away. They add stuff on. That's why we've got 9 income-driven repeal
9
options.
One thing that I think is important to understand is that this is passed by statute and regulations, which means it technically can be amended, it can be changed, it can be eliminated. That is a legal possibility. I think policy-wise and politically, I think it would be a very difficult thing to do to take away this really important benefit for politically sensitive professions like teachers and firefighters and the military and police officers.
Yep.
So I think that if they do make changes, there's a likelihood that I think people that are currently on track for the program would be somehow protected from those changes, and any changes would impact only new borrowers. That's my prediction.
Yeah, I'm with you there. One person asked about, the question was what about predatory lending, and then she came back on and asked if it was stress, and I just want to respond. There's no predatory lending when it comes to the government in terms of like a statutory thing, because student loans at this point, the interest rate it's set each year.
Yeah.
And
By
it's
Congress.
fixed by Congress. So if you think the Congress is predatory, then yeah, there's totally predatory lending. But you're not going to get a federal student loan at 29%.
Right.
Private student loans,
could be, but I've never seen.
yeah.
I mean, I've seen private loans in the low teens,
Yes.
and those are bad, but I don't think that's necessarily, legally speaking, a
Right.
predatory.
I
Well,
think
well,
what needs to be discussed is it predatory in a fairness argument?
Right, exactly.
Yes. In a legal argument, absolutely not.
Right. But what we're going to start seeing, I think, now that the Fed has started increasing interest rates, so many of these private student loans are variable interest rates.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're going to see everybody who's got a private student loan and they're getting 3%, 4%, they're going to start jumping, and they're going to jump fast. And most of the private student loans that I've seen, I don't know about you guys, but the payment amount is fixed, but so many of them negatively amortize.
Or they're
And-
just breaking even.
Yeah.
And you're just treading water for years, paying thousands of dollars and not getting anywhere.
Right, exactly. I want to touch on the private student loans. Question came, what is the likelihood of NES, National Enterprise Systems, to settle an NCT loan? NCT is National Collegiate Trust, National Collegiate Student Loan Trust. Let's talk about settlement real fast. Do federal student loans settle? First,
Yes.
and that's
Do they settle? Yes. Do they settle reasonably? No.
define reasonable.
Well, that's a self-definition, but basically the best I've seen is a 70%. You got 30% discount. So if you owe $100,000, they'll take $70,000, which you've got to pay within
In very,
90 days.
very certain circumstances.
Right, but most of the time, the best settlements I get are 90%. So
And that's only for defaulted federal loans.
again, also for only, but same with private loans. You're never going to
Right.
settle a loan unless you're in default.
Right.
Right.
So-
And even when you settle the federal student loan, then you get a 1099 at the end of the year.
True,
And
but
also,
the
also
1099
for private loans too.
But,
Yeah,
but the
absolutely.
bright side of settling a federal loan is since you only got a 10% discount, that 1099 is next to nothing. So hey, there is a silver lining. Thank you, Jay.
It cuts. It does cut the savings.
But
though.
private
The savings
loans,
though.
I've been hearing now settlements down to 20%, averaging 30 to 40
Yeah.
is what I'm seeing.
What I typically tell
On
people
private?
on
Private
private
loans.
Yeah.
for defaulted private loans, I would say if you've got 50%, you're in a good place. You could probably get it lower than that, but it really does vary though. There are certain private lenders, mostly state-based private lenders, where you're not going to get below 80%. It's very much like a federal loan in that regard. So it really does depend on who the lender is.
Yep. And who the debt collector is.
Yes.
And what stage of collection it is.
Correct.
Yes. And who the loan holder is.
Exactly.
So there's a bunch
There's
of
a lot of
factors. Yeah.
variables.
and which tranche your particular private loan is within
Yeah.
each individual
It's a
trust.
It's a very complicated
Yes,
system.
exactly. You never get a settlement deal when you're current though,
No.
Correct.
because there's no reason for
There's
the
no
lender-
reason. I mean, think about it from a business perspective. If someone's paying me on time and they offer me a lump sum, why would I say yes?
And deliberately defaulting to settle is a potentially very risky thing to do, and I would really heavily caution people about doing that, because even if you really want to settle, defaulting will have serious consequences that will last a while, and that's just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see, what else do we have? Should I consolidate and pick IBR?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Don't know what the circumstances are.
I don't know. Are you current on your loans? If you're current on your loans, and you currently only have direct loans, should you consolidate?
You don't necessarily need to consolidate.
Exactly.
Go back to the reasons why one would consolidate, which is if you don't have direct loans and you want to convert them to direct. So, for instance, a single borrower who is eligible for IBR because they have FEL program loans, but they want to access the revised pay-as-you-earn plan, repay, only direct loans are eligible. So in order to access that program, you have to consolidate. So that could be one reason to do a consolidation. If you're out of deferment and forbearance options and you've got no options and no breathing room and no wiggle room, that could be a reason to consolidate. So it really is fact dependent.
Yes.
Okay, if you've got a payment due on your loan, I get this all the time. If you get a payment due on your loan and you can't make the full payment, can you send them something and that would be okay?
No.
It's not going to help.
All right. Again, legally speaking, you owe X. If you pay less than X, you haven't made your payment.
Right. So I mentioned earlier, delinquency is this period that precedes default. It's about 270 days for federal loans. It's varying periods for private loans. You're delinquent if you are behind by any amount. So that means that if you catch up a little bit, but you're still delinquent and you'll still go into default. So if you're 6 months behind and you make 3 months worth of payments, you're still delinquent. And so you still can go into default.
Right. Well, and it's kind of like the mortgages. If you pay less than the amount that you're supposed to pay, they take the money and they put it into a suspense account.
I don't know that they necessarily do that with Fed loans, but the point is you still have to pay.
Right. Exactly.
And the worst part is it goes towards interest before principal. So if you haven't even covered what your monthly interest is, you're still accruing just as much. You've just thrown something down a well.
Right.
Ooh, perfect follow-on question, which wasn't asked, but your payment's $500 a month. You send them $700 a month. What happens to the other $200 a month?
Depends on what the loan contract says, but many times it'll be divided up, first of all, among all your accounts if you have multiple accounts with that servicer, and it could be divided up evenly. If you want it to go to a specific loan, for instance, your highest interest loan, you have to tell them. If you want it to go to principal, you have to tell them. If you don't tell them, they'll just do whatever they want.
Well, they'll put it to interest. They'll pay down the interest.
They put it towards interest. Now, making an advance payment on an IBR, I believe, is one of the dumbest things you can do, because normally in an IBR payment, you're barely covering interest, if that.
Right.
So you're
negatively
negative amortizing.
Right.
So all you're doing by throwing an extra $200 is you paid an additional $200 in interest, and unless you're doing that successively, that is throwing money down the well.
Right.
If you have enough that you can pay more than the IBR payment, maybe you shouldn't be on IBR.
Yeah, but I actually have a good friend of mine. She's on IBR because she's got very variable income. She's on IBR. She can often make larger payments, and actually what she does is she takes any additional payment that she can make, sucks it into a savings account, waits, and she's waiting until she has enough to pay off whatever she's got.
That makes sense.
I think that's fair, yeah.
Putting in a savings account is different than, I'll just put on the loan right now.
Right.
So that's different.
Okay, fair enough. let's see. I think we've got one or two more questions that we can do. Any opinions on any of the private student loan refinance companies?
No,
Yes.
no voice.
So I just did a couple of reviews of two of the bigger refinancing companies, SoFi and Earnest, and I interviewed a couple borrowers who refinanced through those lenders, and I also got a peek at the loan contracts. And so, just as an initial matter, I don't like private loans generally speaking, and so I don't think you should be taking your federal loans and refinancing. But what these two borrowers did is they had very high interest private loans with very bad private lenders, and they were very bad terms, and they refinanced them through SoFi and Earnest, and they got much lower interest rates. They got much better servicing and much better customer service. And the loan terms, frankly, I compared the notes. The SoFi and Earnest contracts had better loan terms than the original loan contracts that they had before. So I think it was a win for them. But the problem is that to get those loans, you got to have really good credit, you got to have really good income, and you might need a cosigner.
SoFi has actually gone public, I believe, with they are not
Yes,
being
this
as
is new.
strongly credit dependent.
Yes.
They are looking at other factors. So
And,
Yeah.
if SoFi is doing what they can, it seems like, to
Yes.
rescue the market.
And
in a
Earnest
way.
also asks for personal statements. They also have a much more what they call holistic approach. It's an interesting new, I think, trend in this industry. But the few people I've spoken to who have refinanced through them are happy, but I also think it's too early to know. I haven't seen them in litigation yet, so I don't know how they are when people fall upon hard times. It's
Yeah,
too early.
yeah.
What
I agree.
SoFi, what is that? SOF,
There's,
does it stand
there's
for?
Social
SOFI,
finance.
yeah, SOFI. Then there's Earnest. There's Common Bond. There's
Key.
Lenkey. I don't know Lenkey very well. I know that I know a lot of people who work at SoFi. And it seems that SoFi in particular, I haven't spoken to the people at Earnest or Common Bond, but it seems like a lot of what they look at is almost an actuarial approach to it. It's
Yeah.
where did you go to school? What kind of degree?
Yeah.
Yes.
And what kind of earning capacity does that degree have?
Yeah.
Which is why I think SoFi says that dentists are the best ones to finance.
Mhm.
Apparently, dentists make the most money or the most stable money. I don't know. I'm in the wrong line of work.
You can change.
All right. Okay, last question. Well, not really a question. I have 6% or so my interest on my loans. I have excellent credit. Wondering if I should consolidate. Again, it's.
Are we talking a federal or a private? Number one.
Well, there you go.
Because if it's a federal loan, consolidating won't change the interest rate.
And honestly, refinancing, if that's a private loan, 6% isn't too bad.
I mean,
6% isn't bad for either federal or private.
Right. Now, if you've got impeccable credit and you can drop it down to 4 or 3,
Right.
fine. But
Oh, she's talking about going, and I'm sorry, I can't read the. Yeah, I think it's a she. Talking about going from federal to private, and that.
not on 6%.
Not a good
Not
idea.
on 6%.
Not on 6%.
Yeah.
Because here's the backup plan. What is the safety net with the private loan? There is none.
Right.
Unless you consider bankruptcy a safety net.
Right.
With the federal loan, you have a safety net. If you become unemployed, you can get a $0 payment. If you become disabled, you can get a total and permanent disability discharge.
Right.
But
right.
you don't have that safety net, and I'm sorry, but I think that safety net is worth the 6%
I
on a
agree.
federal loan.
And here's what's really important. So I looked at the SoFi and Earnest contracts, and they actually have in there a provision that says you can apply for income-driven repayment if you fall upon hard times. However, that's at the discretion of the lender.
Yeah.
The income-driven programs through the federal student loan system are statutory. They're by law, and you have a right to those programs if you meet the criteria. You don't have that with private loans.
Right. And of course, nobody ever thinks that they're going to fall on hard times.
Right.
Of course not. If we had any inclination that we won't be able to afford a car, we wouldn't buy it. But that's not how we're optimists. We're Americans.
Of course. But you did open up the can of worms on the B word. You used the B word.
Yes, I use the B word.
Yeah,
Because
but
it's not a bad word.
No. I'm not saying that. You know, you opened the can of worms and you said safety net, and then you said bankruptcy, and
Yes.
but
Would you
for
like
s-
to expand?
okay, we'll do 5 minutes on bankruptcy. to what extent is bankruptcy a safety net? You know, you've got the people who say you can never file for bankruptcy and wipe out student loans. You've got the people who say you can do it, and then there's the vast in between that says.
Let's first talk about lingo, okay? I know you get these calls. I can't include my private student loan in my bankruptcy. No, wrong. Actually, you have to include it in your bankruptcy, otherwise you commit fraud. Can you get it discharged?
Right. Can you
no,
get it wiped out?
Not necessarily. But you must include it, okay? So let's get that out of the way. Now, can you discharge it? Not necessarily, but you know what? Most of my clients aren't necessarily looking for a discharge. They're looking for affordable payments, just like their mortgage. And so what a Chapter 13 is for me, or even, not really 7. So a bankruptcy in general, if we're talking Chapter 13, it's going to get you affordable payments if you work with your bankruptcy attorney the right way. That means,
and Chapter 13 is the repayment bankruptcy. You
yes,
pay a certain
right.
amount of money into the court every month for up to 5 years, 60 months.
Yes.
And the court distributes the money to your creditors.
Right. A 7, probably useless for a private student loan, because you're in and out in 6 months and you still have the loan.
Right.
And
7's a discharge.
And you may have defaulted the loan for your cosigner by doing a 7.
So remember, during a bankruptcy, there's a stay, which goes into effect,
Yes.
which prevents the creditors, any creditors, including student loan creditors, from going after you or your cosigner. So that's why the 6 months versus the 60 months is really a huge difference.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, safety net. It protects your cosigner, number 1. How many people have you had call you and say, I just want to protect my cosigner, I don't care at what cost? Save them.
Oh, a lot of my
Age
clients
13.
have really bad family relationships.
Okay, so there's that. But they can still protect that cosigner
Right,
with the 13.
Right.
Are they moving forward? Not necessarily, but they're not moving backwards. In many ways, I see private loans as the Titanic. You're going into really cold water and it's going to hurt. So lose your way. Pick whichever seat you want. Enjoy the scenery. It's all about control. With the 13, you're in control.
You're driving the Titanic.
You've already hit the iceberg. The question is, what do? A 13 at least puts you in control, and it buys you 5 years. We don't know what's going on with your life. Are you in a job with upward mobility? Are you in a job with downward mobility? Where are you going? I think a 13 is a great way to set up an adversarial proceeding for eventual discharge. But you've got 5 years to see what's been going on in your life. Is it going good? Did you win Powerball, or is it going bad? You don't know what the hell you're doing. What's going on? And you've got all of that, and the judge has seen it, opposing counsel has seen it. I think it's a great setup. Of course, there's more to it, but you're in control.
Well, wait a minute. Let's back out of the control. The way that debts are handled in a Chapter 13 bankruptcy and a repayment bankruptcy is there's a hierarchy of debts. You've got your secured debts, which is your mortgage and your car loan. You've got your priority debts, which is most of the new income tax debt that you may have to pay back. And then you've got everybody else, which are general unsecured debts. Credit card debts are paid exactly the same way as student loan debts are.
Yes.
So if you go into a Chapter 13 bankruptcy and you've got $30,000 worth of student loans and $30,000 worth of credit cards, half of your money is going to pay your credit cards, half of your money in your Chapter 13 is going to pay your student loans. For that reason, for my money, or for my client's money,
20.
if that's their situation, I'll always tell them, go into a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, dump out of the credit card debt, so that if you go into a Chapter 13, I've got a room full of people. I got amen here? Yeah, amen! Yeah.
Well, I was going to let you finish your thought.
Oh, okay. But yeah, then this way all of the money
Yes,
is
but-
going to pay the student loans, and even then you've got the trustees taking a vig, and you probably negatively amortize it, because if you're in a 13, you're probably not paying all of the money that is accruing on the interest. So you come out of the 13 and you're gonna owe more money. Go ahead, DJ, I'm not gonna cut you off now.
Yeah, no, and that's absolutely correct, especially if you're in a local
By the
city.
way, speaking from the back, that's DJ Rausa, R-A-U-S-A. He's a lawyer. I'm not aware that he's an actual DJ, but maybe you are. I don't know. He's in San Diego. He does bankruptcy law, and he does student loan law also. He's been here before, so we know him well. Go ahead.
Well, so what I was going to get back to is that you have to really look at where the client's going to be when they exit at 13, because if
Yes.
you're the less than substantial portion of distribution of a Chapter 13, let's say 20% plan, and you have a large student loan debt, and the client's going to be in kind of trouble when they exit.
Yeah.
What I wanted to get back to, and the question I wanted to ask was, in a Chapter 7 situation where a client files Chapter 7, they're current on the payments of their private loan, and then when they exit the Chapter 7, the private lender calls the note due.
Yes.
Now, is that or is that not a violation of the ipso facto?
Depends on what circuit you're in. The Second Circuit allows it, the Fourth doesn't. I don't know about the other circuits.
Yeah, it depends upon what state you reside in. It depends upon which state your bankruptcy court's in. And what TJ's talking about is there's a provision in pretty much every private loan that I've ever seen.
It's the death and bankruptcy clause.
Right, it's the death and bankruptcy clause. You go into default the minute that either borrower dies or goes into bankruptcy. Last year there was the story about the guy in California, not terribly far from me. His daughter had gone to nursing school, had graduated, gotten to I think it was a car accident, or she had a medical issue, and she died, and he co-signed for $100 and some odd thousand worth of private student loans, and he was on the hook. Now, my understanding is that most of the lenders eventually came to the table to some extent, but there was a huge amount of PR.
And it was the PR that got him.
I think so.
And you talk about wanting to protect your co-signers. You know, if you're considering bankruptcy because of your student loan debt, that is something to consider. If the bankruptcy is not going to result in a discharge of your loan, and it's going to be in default on the other side when it's not now, that's going to impact both the borrower and the co-borrower, and that could have pretty serious ramifications. And that's something that you want to factor into your decision making.
Yeah, right.
So the language, the very specific language of 11 U.S.C. 525 really mirrors almost the exact language that's used in 528A8B as far as Title IV and who administers and everything else.
Yeah.
My point is that in that situation, if they're calling that note due, then that is discriminatory treatment as far as I'm concerned. So my question was, has that issue been litigated as far as you know in the bankruptcy context?
No, let us know how that goes, DJ.
Not to my knowledge, but one thing that we're actually starting to look very closely at is private student loans who file lawsuits against borrowers, get judgments against borrowers. In New York, at least, that judgment automatically becomes a lien against property. It's an automatic security interest. So you can take a general unsecured debt, turn it into a secured debt, and pay it off in full, strip it off, and get rid of the damn thing in a 13. And we've got a client who probably isn't going to answer their lawsuit because they're willing to take a flyer on it. And I really want to see how that works out. But talking about dischargeability of student loans in bankruptcy real quick, and then I'll have one final question. But discharging student loans in bankruptcy, it exists.
Yes, it can be done.
It's not impossible. A lot of people are under the mistaken impression that you cannot do it. You can. It's just hard, and it requires an entirely separate proceeding to do so.
It is very fact specific.
Yes.
You need to find an attorney who's willing to do it, who you can afford, which is kind of a catch-22. But you know what? The right case, the right attorney will take.
Right.
And it's a little bit like finding a needle in a haystack, but it can be done. And you happen to be looking at three people who, if we can't do it, we know someone who can.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and what I find is a lot of people will call me up and say, hey, I want to discharge my student loans in bankruptcy. And now anybody who's here today, and the three of us well know, that's probably going to be your last step, because if you're thinking of discharging your student loans in bankruptcy, for the federal ones at least, you may have other options, and even for the private ones. I mean, look, you may be in a position where New York has a 6-year statute of limitations on collection for private student loans, for private debts of any kind. We've got a lot of clients who are 5 years and change
Yeah.
down the rabbit hole. I
It's-
don't want them to pay.
Bankruptcy should be
agree.
part of the conversation, but
Yes.
it's not necessarily the solution for every person's problems with student loans.
Yeah.
I just wanted some clarity on something that you mentioned earlier. So, private lender, maybe just go ahead and they get judgment for default on the private student loan. They get judgment automatically. It's recorded as a lien against any real property
In New
that
York.
county.
In New York.
Not in Massachusetts.
Well, I maybe in California, because if you're familiar with that. So in California, you get a lien, you get a judgment, you get an automatic lien when you record it in that county where you're
Right.
located. Then you file the bankruptcy. Can you then strip, as part of the Chapter 7, strip that lien and then get rid of that, or is that still part of that whole federal protection? You can't get rid of that student loan.
No, you can't strip on the 7. You have
That's
teachers.
exactly what I was saying.
You can.
No, you can do a lien avoidance, but you can't do a lien strip.
Well, lien avoidance.
Right, right.
So it's whether
But
it's
the
a
answer is,
522 or
It still exists and it's still non-dischargeable because of 523
Yeah, so you
But-
would erase the lien against
Yes.
the house, but that loan is.
The loan is
Well,
still there.
the
judgment
But it
is still
sounds
there.
like, Jay, what you're saying is you turn the unsecured into a secured,
Bingo.
which means you get priority in payments and so on and so
Pay the
forth.
whole damn thing off. Absolutely.
And that's got some power to it. The
Yeah.
creditors are not going to fight because they want the money.
Exactly. And you're paying the secured even above the taxing authority. And you're getting you get a real windfall there.
What happens to the cosigner though?
Well, if you're paying the
cosigner
loan.
in that
Default.
private loan. So, but then you go to Chapter 13. Does that put a hold on their ability to collect from the cosigner?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
Chapter 13. When you go into Chapter 13, there's a a co-borrower stay. You, as well as anybody else who's obligated on that promissory note, no legal action can be taken against them in the absence of
Lifting
court
the
order,
stay.
a lift stay order. So that's why the 13 is so much more powerful when you've got grandma on the hook for this $45,000 private student loan. You know, you get some of the heat off of grandma, which is good. That's the benefit of the 13. Last question that I've got. You're in school. You're an in-school deferment. You start paying the student loan, or not,
So, I would say you should.
or put the money in the bank.
It's better to minimize borrowing than to take out loans and then try to repay it as you go. So I think that to the extent that you can just minimize your borrowing, that is preferable. And then if you are going to make any payments on your student loans while in school, in my opinion, the priority should be private first, and then federal, and then within the federal sphere, unsubsidized first, because while you're in school, your subsidized loans are not accruing any interest. So private, and then your highest interest unsubsidized federal loans if you're going to make payments.
I agree.
Yes.
And so when you're saying minimizing borrowing, you mean if you've got extra money, sock it away so next semester
Exactly.
instead of taking
Exactly.
20
Because
grand.
you can borrow up to the cost of attendance, and that includes living expenses. And a lot of people just borrow to the max because you can, but you shouldn't. You can always go back for more if you need to, but it's better to borrow less in the beginning and live on less. And then you can always borrow more if you need to, but it's better to just minimize your borrowing.
Yes.
I agree.
Okay.
All right. Wow, we've gone an hour.
Yeah.
How about that? That's crazy. We were only going to do a half hour. So that's all we got. Thanks for being here. I'm Jay Fleischman. You can find me at studentloanshow.com or consumerhelpcentral.com. Adam, where can everybody find you?
I'm Adam Minsky. You can find me at bostonstudentloanlawyer.com, and you can tweet at me at Adam S. Minsky.
And I'm Joshua Cohen. You can find me at thestudentloanlawyer.com. And what is my Twitter handle? Student Loan Law, I believe?
Student loan law. I think.
Student Loan Law?
He's never there. Don't go on Twitter. He's never there. Email's good. Facebook's good.
Email is good.
We're all
Facebook,
on
you can
Facebook.
find us.
We're all
You
on
can find us all
Facebook,
on
yeah.
Facebook as well. Everybody's on Facebook.
Right.
So I think we're done.
Yes, thank you for joining
Thanks,
us.
everybody.
Thank
We're
you.
going to take
Thank you.
5 minutes, and then we'll come back for our other stuff. Not you guys, them. Okay, bye.
We'll clap for you.